Get your Turducken ready, everybody. It's the best time of the year with football on Thursday, Friday, Sunday, and Monday. Yes. Welcome back to EDFF. This is the Week 12 recap. Thanks for joining us. We're going to do something a little different tonight. We're going to have a conversation about what happened this weekend, what we expect moving forward. We're going to talk waiver ads, injuries. There's a lot to unpack tonight. I'm not going to get deep into some of these statistics that you've probably already seen. I might mention a few, but what we really need to talk about is usage and who we can really trust in our lineups moving forward. Now, first off, we'll start with injuries from this weekend, some updates just to see where we stand before we get into it. We had a couple guys who didn't practice today. Ferguson, Dobbs, Raymond, two of them with concussions. Raymond's got a foot injury. A lot of limited guys, some big names, Rush, Lamb, St. Brown, Montgomery, Theo Johnson, and DeVito. Pacheco, he's going to play this week, but how much of a timeshare, we don't really know. Either way, it's going to hurt Hunt. O'Connell, he's going to start. Ouch, that's bad. And then there's still some uncertainty about a couple other names, Dobbins being one of them. Really need to check the injury reports. Remember, 90 minutes prior, we got games in every day. So it's going to be something you're going to constantly have to monitor, or you can just monitor my X feed and I'll give you real-time updates. Totally up to you. All right, let's talk about what happened this Sunday. Now, out of respect, we're going to start with the pride of the Lions. This game disappointed in a lot of respects. It was supposed to be the second highest scoring game of the week, according to Vegas, but they missed drastically bad on this one. The question is why? The Lions struggled early on in the first quarter to even score, but then when they started to get it going, second, third quarter, they looked good. Defense held when it needed to, as expected. The Colts were unable to move the ball relatively effectively. For the Lions, Goff was unable to find any touchdowns through the air. He only finished with 269 yards passing. It's not for a lack of trying, but the coaching staff was determined to control the game on the ground running the ball, which I don't have a problem with. Gibbs was his usual dominant self. He had 2 touchdowns. Montgomery looked like a beast again. He added a touchdown, but then he had a shoulder injury and he didn't come back. That's bad. Now it's a short week for Montgomery. He's important to the team. I'm hoping they don't risk anything because I think they can beat the Bears simply with Gibbs at the running back position, but coach seems to be asking a lot of guys and taking a lot of risks lately. And the biggest risk he took in the game was putting St. Brown as a punt returner, which he's done before when Raymond got hurt. Unsurprisingly, this led to an injury for St. Brown, who is now limited this week, but coach thinks he will most likely play. The worst part about his comments today were that he wants St. Brown to continue to field punts, which is a tragic mistake. It has a high probability of getting him injured. Now, I like Dan Campbell. I like his energy. I like his emotion. But his decision-making capability is flawed. We saw it in the NFC Championship game where he was unable to divorce himself from the moment emotionally and make an informed, intelligent decision strategically in the game. We see the same thing here. His players love him. They'll do anything for him. I can see why, but risking St. Brown against a Bears team that is angry, has no chance of the playoffs, and they're looking to create a highlight reel for themselves by taking out a top player on Detroit's side is just ludicrous. The best thing that can happen to Detroit on Thursday is St. Brown comes out of this healthy. Laporta returned to this game this weekend. He saw 6 targets. He only caught 3. He's not a big piece of the offense right now, unless St. Brown were to be lost to an injury or something like that on a punt return. For now, you're going to start him along with the rest of the Detroit starters unless something dramatically changes. Now, on the other side of the ball, the Colts are an absolute train wreck. Richardson lacks overall talent. We've seen enough of it to know that now. All right, his ability to read a defense, it's poor. He spends most of his time trying to run his way to glory, vulturing touchdowns left and right from JT and the rest of his wide receivers. And the coaches let him do it because they're trying to keep his ego high enough. Now, in this game, he never had a chance. He's up against the Lions. They didn't even score a touchdown. He did something odd, though. He was able to target Pittman the most in the game, 7 times. Pittman had some real success. He caught 6 for 96. That's a really welcome sign if you had Pittman and you didn't drop him, even after the disastrous season he's been having. The tough part was Downs didn't get enough targets, and then, of course, Downs got banged up. Now, even JT had a rough time, but that's to be expected. I mean, like we said in our previous podcast, it is the Lions. Now, moving forward for both of these teams, for the Lions, it's easy. You're going to start all of the key players, regardless of the matchup. For the Colts, it's going to be a tough one. They face the Patriots next week. They can be stingy against the pass, but poor against the run. You can start JT with moderate confidence for the rest of the season, but half the time, he has a chance at a touchdown. Richardson is going to steal it from him. At this point, you have any other option. The rest of the team is really touchdown dependent. With Richardson at the helm, you just have to hope that if you start one of these guys, Richardson looks their way and actually gets him a touchdown before he thinks of himself. All right, moving on to the Vikings versus the Bears. This game was supposed to be the lowest scoring game, according to Vegas, of the entire week. But instead, it turned out to be one of the highest scoring. Went into overtime, and the Vikings lucked out again. Sam Darnold had yet another mistake-free day with 330 yards and 2 touchdowns. Now I'm going to answer a question that most people keep asking this week. The reason that Darnold is having success is because the coaching staff is keeping him away from throwing the deep ball to JJ, which means Addison and Hawkinson are the ones who are getting the targets now because they're safer plays. Underneath, moving across the field, they're not getting double coverage. It's obvious the coaching staff is trying to cover for Darnold's lack of downfield vision and keeping the throws to a short, medium distance, and that keeps his mistakes low, gets the ball out of his hand quicker. I can't blame them. Darnold's terrible. He really is. But it works for them. They have a lot of talent underneath with Addison and TJ. Addison, he had a huge game, 8 receptions, 162 yards, and a touchdown, like a career day for him. Hawkinson, 7 for 114. They both had 9 targets. That's a lot. JJ only got 5 targets in this game. Moving forward, I think you expect the same. The Vikings can't afford to lose games, especially the teams that probably they should be beating. And they have to keep pace with the Lions in order to squeak in the playoffs, or Green Bay is going to catch them. The coaching staff knows that. That's the reason why this is happening. And it's also the reason why Aaron Jones got 22 carries. They finally decided, you know what? We're done with this whole Jones-Akers split kind of thing. We're just going to give it to Jones. And that was a huge win for them. Jones looked good. I mean, he's old, but he still cracked the century mark. He had a really nice game. On the flip side, the Bears, they're really done. At this point, the coaching staff is just trying to protect their jobs. Caleb Williams threw 47 times, 340 yards, 2 touchdowns. That's a big day for him. That's not normal. It's surprising because he had been shut down the entire time, but for some odd reason, the Vikings defense just decided to give up 17 points in the fourth quarter and lay down. I have no idea why. Williams finally decided he's going to be accurate with the ball. Congratulations. He targeted Keenan Allen 15 times, 86 yards and a touchdown. He gave 10 targets to Komet and Adunzi both, but those are outliers. They shouldn't be counted on moving forward like that. DJ Moore, 7 targets. That's about normal for him, but 106 yards and a touchdown, that's a little bit higher than normal, which is awesome if you're a DJ Moore owner. Now, the trouble is you can never determine who's going to get the targets in each one of these games. DJ Moore is startable because you're hoping for a game like this. Allen is startable because he seems to get a lot of the dump-off targets. You know, from a PPR perspective, he keeps himself in the mix. But I don't think any of the other wide receivers are startable in this particular case. Williams, he can give you 30 points as a quarterback, or he can give you 3 points. You just don't know how bad he's going to be. So if you're starting him, you're really keeping your fingers crossed. What I do know is that if you're starting Swift moving forward, you need to know that Rashawn Johnson is going to vulture a touchdown from him every single time. You got to hope that Swift scores from a distance, because once they're inside the 10-yard line, Johnson gets the ball or Williams gets the ball because he needs to get his. The best time to start these players are when they're in the game when they're going to be likely blown out. And that leads to this week where they're playing against the Lions. But it's a catch here. It's the Lions. Now, I actually think this game against the Lions is a trap game for the Lions. I think in a weird way, the Bears do better than everyone thinks this week. But again, there's just no one you can confidently start, even though you probably don't have any bench options to go with. All right, in the Pats-Dolphins game, we said this game was going to have a little more fireworks than the first game, which was a snooze fest, and we were right. The Dolphins, they're gelling better. Tua's back. The Patriots tried to put up a good fight. Tua, he put up 317 and 4 touchdowns. Wow. Top target was Waddle. Huge surprise there. Waddle's kind of been like the forgotten guy. Monster day, 8 catches, 144 yards and a touchdown. Tua's new BFF, though, Jonas Smith, still on track. 9 targets, 4 catches, 87 yards, touchdown. The biggest surprise was the lack of ability to run against the Patriots, who traditionally give up quite a lot on the ground. A-Chain, he made up for it on the dump-off passes, and he got 2 touchdowns that way. The rest of the running backs were completely unremarkable. Moving forward, obviously the key offensive starters on this team, you should feel confident starting each week although Waddle is kind of like a hit or miss. The only running back you should be starting is A-Chain because he really provides the kind of consistency that you need going into the playoffs. Now, I thought the Patriots would do better than they did, especially for Drake May. He threw 37 times, 222 yards, 26 on the ground, only one touchdown. He came up short of the 2 touchdowns I thought he would have, so this was an off day for him. He targeted Douglas and Henry the most, which made sense, but then Hooper got the only touchdown. That's kind of an outlier. The biggest takeaway of this game, though, was their lack of ability to run the ball. I wouldn't put it all on Stevenson's shoulders because the team only gave him 8 attempts, and I thought that was odd. Gibson was in basically a timeshare with him, and Gibson really hasn't shown any dominance at all. I think it was really a factor more of the Dolphins' defensive line is getting healthier than they were the previous session. And if the Dolphins can get Fuller back at cornerback and remain healthy, they have a chance to push for the playoffs. But they have a big test next week against the Packers. The Packers haven't been a very strong team on defense, so I would start all the key players from Miami next week. Moving on to the Bucs versus the Giants, this game was a train wreck for the Giants, which came as no surprise to anybody, except for the fact that they actually scored a late touchdown. DeVito was awful in this game, as expected, and then he ended up getting injured, which might end up bring Drew Lock in starting this week. But in standard Giant fashion, they're going to hide that as much as possible. The Giants were behind so quickly that they had to abandon the run, but Tracy didn't do anyone any favors by fumbling early in the game. He looked good and averaged almost 5 yards a carry, but they had to go away from him, so we only saw 9 rushes. He caught 4 balls. Still a good starter in your lineups, but Singletary came in and vultured the only touchdown, and that was concerning. I'm not sure if that was like a message to Tracy from the coaching staff or, hey, don't fumble again, or we're going to put him back in. I still think he's going to get the lion's share of plays, but don't be surprised if it turns out into like a timeshare this week on a short week. Now, Neighbors, he saw the most targets, although he waited a long time before they actually went after him. He had a decent PPR game catching 6 for 64, but that was desperation garbage time, which of course most fantasy owners will take. Now, I said Theo Johnson would command some targets because bad quarterbacks look for tight ends to bail them out. He saw 6 targets. That was second most on the team, but he got banged up in the game and that limited his work, and he's limited in practice this week, so take a look if you're going to be starting him. For the Bucs, they were dominant, but Mayfield didn't get a touchdown in this one, except running it in. In fact, every single running back got a touchdown, with Irving proving to be the strongest running back, getting 87 yards on the ground and averaging 7 a carry. The biggest surprise was Irving catching 6 balls, leading the team. Now, usually that goes to White, but he only recorded 1 catch. Could we be seeing a dramatic shift in who gets the PPR points moving forward? I hope so. Irving is the more talented back. Obviously, if you're a White owner, that sounds bad. But don't be surprised if that happens. Now, Evans came back. He looked healthy, but he only had 6 targets, which is probably why Mayfield never threw for a touchdown. But I would expect Evans to get more targets as the weeks move forward. With Evans back, Otten took a back seat. He only had 3 targets. Hopefully, this is an outlier because we all know he's really talented. He showed it. Both wide receivers were gone, and he was dominating. I would still confidently start him this week, but if he has another bad week, you might have to consider other options if you've got him. Now, the Bucs are still playing for a potential playoff spot. They face the Panthers in Carolina. All the key players are obvious starts in this game, but the Tucker touchdown from this last week, it's an outlier. I don't see him as startable in this game. Final note, again, the Buccaneer defense is getting healthier. They lost their safety a couple of days ago, unfortunately, but they got their top corner back, and they're showing that they're strong. And their next 2 opponents, Carolina and Vegas, this defense could be a starting workhorse for you in the playoffs. All right, Cowboys, Commanders. Cowboys come into the game 11-point underdogs and prove Vegas wrong once again. That's like 3 out of the first 5 games we've talked about that Vegas was completely wrong, which is odd. Now, I told you Cooper Rush wasn't afraid to throw the ball, but he only had 32 attempts. He got 2 touchdowns out of it because his defense did most of the work tonight. Let's not forget the crazy fourth quarter. I mean, you got to be kidding me. Lamb was his top target. Huge monster, but only 67 yards. Closest person after that was Shoemaker. He had 4 targets. He got a touchdown. So if you took my advice and started him, you were highly rewarded with 55 yards and a touchdown. Congratulations. I said Rico Dotto would have a good game here. He got 22 touches for almost 100 yards total, but no touchdown. Still a positive day, but a touchdown would have been better. Obviously, This weekend against the Giants for Thanksgiving, you're going to play Dowdle, Lamb, Shoemaker. Everyone else is a dart throw, but Cooper Rush could also be a decent start in the game, although the Bucs showed that the Giants are really soft against the run, so don't expect Cooper to have a huge success against them. The Commanders, on the other hand, they were a total letdown. I know Daniels had a good box score, 74 yards on the ground, touchdown, then 275 with 2 touchdowns through the air. Yeah, that's a really good day. But the fact that the Cowboys were able to win the game in the end is more of a factor of how bad Daniels was in the first half. You're still going to start him from a fantasy perspective, but this was a bad outing in the first half that was only saved because the defenses literally decided to take a vacation in the fourth quarter. It was crazy. I'm sure everybody watched it. Terry McLaurin, he was having a terrible game until he gets an 86-yard miracle touchdown in the fourth quarter. Let's face it, everyone was screaming for that one, but it looked really bad until those last moments. Noah Brown came alive, led the team in targets. He went 6 for 71. It's nice to see him being incorporated more. I'm not sure that's going to happen moving forward, but, it was good to see. If he has another week like that, I'd feel more confident starting him. Zach Ertz, he was second in targets on the team. He caught 6 for 38 and a touchdown. The biggest story, though, that came out of this game was the loss of both Brian Robinson and Eckler. So Robinson, don't really know how bad his injury is. Eckler, he's got a concussion. He's in the protocol. They both look unlikely to play this week. I'm guessing your waiver wire has Jeremy McNichols on it, which is someone, if you have any free agent bidding money left, you need to grab. If not for this one game, maybe you'll get 2 games out of him, but you got to grab him. He's going to get 15 to 20 touches. Now, the loss of these 2 starting running backs for Washington will probably force Daniels to continue to run as much as he did in this game. They're facing a must-win situation at home against the Titans, and he'll probably have success, although the Titans surprised by beating the Texans this weekend. Moving forward, in the final weeks of the season, going into the playoffs, Daniels, McLaurin, Robinson, and Eckler, they're all starts when they're healthy. But Noah Brown, again, he needs to show me another game before I would say you could start him. All right, in the Chiefs-Panthers game, wow. The Chiefs come off their first loss of the season, and then they try to lose again in embarrassing fashion in the fourth quarter of the Panthers. Big story was the Chief defense unable to stop the Panthers, and the Chief offense just sputtering in the second half of the game, allowing the Panthers to come right back into it. I said Mahomes would have success in this game, and he did. 269 yards passing, 3 touchdowns. That was a big day for him. I can't even remember the last time he had 3 touchdowns this season. He also had 60 yards on the ground, which is a little bit more than he normally does. I also told you that he can't really throw the deep ball anymore, and he targets his tight ends mostly, and they're the ones who did the most damage. Noah Gray went off again for 2 touchdowns. I would tell you that's an outlier, but it's the second time this season he's done that. If you have Noah Gray on your team, he's a starter. The reason he's a starter is because no one focuses on him in the red zone. I mean, he's got Hopkins, he's got Kelsey to worry about. Kelsey, 6 for 62. He had a nice day. Taylor Swift doesn't have because he didn't catch a touchdown for her. But hey, maybe she'll get one on Turkey Day. You never know. He did lead in targets, but again, no touchdowns. Hopkins, Worthy, both had 6 touchdowns apiece, but Hopkins got the touchdown. Worthy, again, the only way he's going to get a touchdown is it's going to be a distance one. He is just not a red zone threat for Mahomes. And you've heard me say it before, I just don't think Worthy is startable because of his consistency. It's starting to look a little bit better, but I need to see more. And there's also talk of Hollywood Brown coming back, and that's going to cut right into Worthy's playing time. So when Hollywood's back, look out. The other big story of the week, Pacheco's coming back. That's going to affect Hunt, obviously. How much of a timeshare, we don't know. But I think Pacheco is at least good for a 50-50 split this week with Hunt. Don't be surprised if he actually gets more playing time than Hunt. Hunt was looking a little bit slow and beat up. I don't know if his conditioning is good this deep into the season, but I think getting a fresh Pacheco back really helps them. For the Panthers, here we have it. Another 11-point underdog that completely outplayed Vegas. Seriously, Vegas, did you fall asleep this week? What happened? Bryce Young, he wasn't particularly amazing. 263 yards and a touchdown. That's not terrible. But the biggest surprise in the receiving core was David Moore getting 10 targets and catching 6 of them for 81 yards and a touchdown. This is definitely an outlier. Don't go running out there to get David Moore until you see more consistency from him. Now, it's all about momentum now. Who does Bryce Young trust? He just hasn't latched on to anyone, it seems. Thielen came back, but he only got 4 targets for 57. He had a lot of key plays, drew a pass interference. He also had a red zone look. So if you see a little bit more consistency out of him, maybe a couple more extra targets, he probably becomes startable. Hubbard, he got his standard 15 to 20 touches, but he only had 58 yards and a touchdown, so the touchdowns saved him. That's because the Kansas City defense is pretty decent against the run, but he still had a successful day, and he can be started for the rest of the season. Jonathan Brooks, a lot of hype about him. He only got 2 rushes for 7 yards. I think moving forward, again, Hubbard, still good for 15 to 20. They'll try to mix in Brooks, a couple carries here and there as they test the rest of the season, but Hubbard's still the guy. Titans and Texans. So the team with nothing left to play for in the entire season except for pride goes into Houston as 8-point underdogs and spanks the Texans. Wow. Okay, there's 7 reasons why this happened, and one of them I broke down for you before the week even started. And that's the fact that CJ Stroud does not have the confidence of his coaches right now. Now, I know a lot of fans of his are going to say, like, hey, he threw for 247 yards and 2 touchdowns, but he also had 2 really bad interceptions, and he only targeted Nico 9 times. Collins had a decent day with 5 catches for 92 and a touchdown, but he also couldn't find Dell. He couldn't really move the offense. Even bigger shocker was that Mixon didn't even get any carries, it felt like. I mean, when you're watching this game, it made me feel like the coaching staff was trying to get away from Mixon because he had 3 touchdowns in the previous game, and they were trying to force it on Stroud to kind of create some confidence in their quarterback. His recent interceptions in the red zone, they have really taken away his confidence. And I felt like this was kind of a, hey, you can do it, man. You can do it. Felt like one of those pep talk kind of games, you know, where, hey, you can show us that you're more important than Mixon. But he really didn't do that, and they lost. And the toughest thing for the Texans moving forward is their defense looks awful. I mean, if you can let Will Levis drop 278 yards and 2 touchdowns on you, and then allow Tony Pollard 24 carries for 119 and a touchdown, you have some issues. Now, I hope you started Westbrook Keeney in this game because guess what? He got another touchdown, just like we said. Woohoo! This kid can find the end zone. I love him. You got to start him moving forward. Ridley had his normal day, 5 catches for 93. But Will Levis, man, you got to be kidding me, man. He hits a tight end, Okonkwo, for a 70-yard crossing pattern, and it goes for a touchdown because he's completely uncovered. Miracle play, just like the Akini play 2 weeks ago. I don't know how he's doing it, but these miracle plays, they're not always going to be there. Levis, I still think, is unstartable. I don't care what happened. In the late window, we'll talk about the Broncos and Steelers first. Now, I thought the Broncos were going to do much better than this from a skill player perspective. I mean, I thought Bo Nix would get 3 touchdowns. He only got 2, 273 yards passing. That's not too bad. It's still a strong outing. I don't know who's going to be the running back. I don't think even the team knows who's going to be the running back, who's going to get the most carries going into the game. For, this time it was Williams and McLaughlin basically getting an even share. And I told you Sutton commands the targets. He led the team. He had 97 yards and 2 touchdowns. Monster day for him. I told you could start Veli in a pinch, and he could give you some solid numbers. And he did. He was second in the team in targets. He caught 6 for 80 yards. That's a really solid week. He has basically solidified himself as the second wide receiver on the team and someone that you can confidently start moving forward who can give you 10, 12 points PPR per week. That's not terrible. Now we need to see a touchdown out of him. What was really terrible was the Denver defense. I can't believe they gave up that many points to the Raiders. I mean, Minshew didn't have a whole lot of magic in him because he got injured. He threw for 230 yards and a touchdown and 1 interception before he got banged up. The problem for Vegas now is O'Connell's coming in this week, and he's got Ritter as his backup. Neither of these guys are good. They cannot be started. In fact, everyone else on the team is brought down. The best thing about Minshew is that he'd pepper Myers and Bowers no matter what. I mean, those two had 15 and 10 targets respectively in this game, and Myers had 121 yards. Will they get the same target share with O'Connell? I don't think so. I know Amir Abdul got a touchdown. It was lucky. He caught 5 balls for 37. That was really what saved him. This is not normal output. I would not start him. White or Madison might come back, and now it'll be a timeshare. It'll be even worse. And, oh, by the way, Vegas goes into Kansas City, which is one of the toughest places to play in all of the NFL, and I cannot see anyone worthy of a start on this team, except for Myers and Bowers. But even then, you have to temper your expectations. Kansas City's favored by 12 for a reason, although apparently Vegas couldn't seem to get anything right this week, so who knows? It could be a beatdown. All right, in the 49ers-Packers game, Again, tale of two teams going opposite directions in health. The 49ers, they only got 10 points, and that was truly a gift. Allen showed he is completely ineffective as a quarterback, and if Purdy doesn't come back this week, it's going to be another embarrassing outing. He did get Kittle 6 times for 82 yards and a touchdown, which is a bright spot, but he couldn't find Jennings. I don't even think he knows what Samuel's jersey is. It's terrible. McCaffrey had a bad game. The O-line looked bad. As talented as McCaffrey is, when you're up against an ineffective quarterback, you can load up the box against the running back, and you can spy him the entire time. And he's probably going to see that this week if Purdy doesn't come back. Allen makes Jennings and Samuel unstartable this week. Honest, I said it. And he also makes McCaffrey and Kittle almost dart throws, except for the fact that I always say bad quarterbacks, young quarterbacks, they lean on tight ends and running backs to bail them out. So there's still a good chance that they're going to have a decent week. But boy, they looked bad this week. Green Bay, they came into this game. They were really healthy. They did lose Dobbs to a concussion. He's having a rough time in practice this week, so he probably won't play. Jacobs, he looked amazing. 26 rushes for 160 yards, 3 touchdowns. Brings me back to my original point about how Jordan Love is having difficulty as a quarterback. He's facing the same kind of confidence problem that CJ Stroud's got right now at Texas because he throws too many interceptions in the red zone. Love, he had a decent day, 163 yards and 2 touchdowns, but he had almost nothing on the ground. It didn't even crack the top 15 quarterbacks this week. He had trouble finding Reed on the day, and the rest of his receivers for that fact. It's almost as if he was afraid to throw the ball, period. Now, I give the Niners credit. They're strong against the pass, and Love's first touchdown was kind of a miracle to Kraft, who broke like 5 tackles just to get in the end zone. On a final note, don't run out there and get Heath, thinking he's going to replace Dobbs this week and get another touchdown. I think this was a complete outlier in garbage time when they were way ahead. So don't reach on that guy. Now, Green Bay hosts the Dolphins this week, which are much tougher against the run. So Love is going to have to throw the ball more. We'll see if he gets his confidence back. On the flip side, the Niners have to go into Buffalo to try to win. And if Allen's a quarterback, train wreck written all over it. Buffalo defense is really strong right now. And there's a weather alert for a lot of snow. This could be a really tough game to generate throwing yards. So that means running backs are going to have to win it. And oh, by the way, defense. I like the Bills' chances here. If it's a snowy game like that, kickers really don't get a whole lot of love. So look for a different option. I know. I just talked about kickers. I just vomited. All right, in the Cardinals-Seahawks game. This game was an absolute boring waste of time. The Cardinals were completely ineffective. The Seahawks weren't much better. Kyle Murray had 285 yards passing, no touchdowns, and an interception. I told you McBride was going to be a target hog. Geez, 15 targets, 12 receptions, 133 yards. Wow. Now, Seattle's really, they could be the worst team against tight ends. So if you have a tight end starting against Seattle, this week is going to be your week. Now, here's the funny part. The Seahawks are playing the Jets this week. Conklin, he doesn't even get enough looks from Rodgers as it is, but when he does, he'll be open. He might be able to catch the ball. You might get a free touchdown out of him. Don't go run out and get Conklin, even though Seattle's the worst against tight ends. Now, getting back to the snooze fest. Murray, he couldn't even find Harrison, who had 3 catches for 47. That's the way to beat this team. Shut down Harrison. The running game, they were terribly ineffective. All of the running backs, Benson, Connor averaged a yard a carry. Benson outcarried Connor and averaged 4.5 a carry, but he didn't get enough love. There's not enough data right now to show that Benson is going to take over for Connor here, but Connor, he's looking a little bit old right now. Maybe Benson with the fresh legs, he's the one who needs to come in. And if I'm the Cardinals, I'm on the cusp of getting eliminated from the playoffs. I need some kind of spark. Benson could be it. For now, he's a bench stash. We have to see. The Seahawks, they were largely ineffective because Arizona tends to play decent defense. Sometimes they have off weeks, but they can be a tough defense overall. Walker was particularly inefficient on the ground. He only had 41 yards on 16 carries. He did catch 4 for 62, but no touchdowns. Gino was mediocre, 254 yards and a touchdown and an interception. His number one target now, no question, is JSN, who caught 6 for 77 and a touchdown. It's hard to admit that he's overtaken Metcalf as the alpha on this team, but I think it's true. Metcalf, great receiver, but JSN is faster, younger, gives Gino the capability to make big plays. Lockett, he has definitely disappeared. I think he's a bench stash moving forward. It's like we said after JSN, Metcalf, and Walker, there's really nothing left as far as opportunity on this team for who you start. All right, let's talk Sunday Night Football. Eagles Rams. This game was absolutely crazy. Eagles scored 37 points, and Hurts only had 179 yards passing and a touchdown, period. Of course, the man of the year, Barkley, he went off. I don't even need to list his ridiculous stats. They were mind-blowing. He was the best pick of the draft this year in fantasy's first/early second round. A.J. Brown dominated in targets, yards, had a touchdown without Devontae Smith in the game. Goddard, he got Smith's normal targets, but he only caught 4 for 19. Again, if you've got a better option to start over Goddard, I would. It was the Barkley show and a story there. Now the Rams, they were usual selves. Stafford gave double-digit targets to his 2 top wide receivers. They both had good days, but Kupp came away with a touchdown. Kyron Williams looked strong again. He had his normal, 70 to 100 yards total, and he got a touchdown. But this time, he didn't have any catches, which was interesting. Now, you're going to start all 4 of these guys for the rest of the season. They're going to have good weeks, and they're going to have great weeks, regardless of who they're playing against. So start them with confidence. This week, the Rams roll into New Orleans. It should be a high-scoring game. But the Eagles going to Baltimore for a shootout, so both should be good weeks for your fantasy starters here to try to get you in the playoffs. All right, the last game, Monday Night Football. It didn't disappoint. It was a little bit of a surprise, though, as far as the scoring was concerned, because the Ravens, they really put up a lot of points in the Chargers. The Chargers defense is usually dominant, but not in this game. Speaking of dominant, Henry, standard, 140 yards on the ground. Though early on in the game, it didn't look like he was going to have that big of a game. Jackson, he was the star of the show. 2 touchdowns in the air, 1 on the ground. But he only had 192 yards of total offense for himself. And that's kind of Jackson's standard. The yards aren't that big, but the touchdowns are. Flowers, he was mediocre, catching only 5 for 62. I would have expected a touchdown, so you were probably disappointed if you started him. Once again, is it Andrews? Is it likely? Who gets the touchdown? It was Andrews this time. Both of them are starters moving forward if they're healthy, but again, they're touchdown dependent. You just don't know who's going to get it. Bateman had a touchdown. That's not normal for him, so congrats if you started him, but that was kind of a surprise. Another surprise, Justice Hill got a touchdown, but the only way he's going to get that is if he does what he did. He rips a 51-yard touchdown off. Otherwise, it's the Henry show. But late in the season, maybe late in the playoffs as you get towards the fantasy Super Bowl, if they want to sit Henry and give him some rest because they're getting in the playoffs and their seat is locked in, you might see more Justice Hill. So if he's on your bench, that could be somebody you could play. Now for the Chargers, they've been throwing the ball a lot more lately. They should have seen success against the Ravens because they're a pass funnel defense, but they had trouble throwing the ball. Now I'm not going to talk about Quentin Johnston's 4 drops, which were disgusting, but McConkey only had 6 targets. Hey, he caught them all. He's awesome. 83 yards there. Nice day. But none of the receivers got a touchdown. Palmer, he got 8 targets. He could only catch 3 of them. Disley got 4 for 487. That's his normal. For the rest of the season, you're going to start McConkey and Disley. And if you decide to start Johnston, it's only because you're hoping for one of those touchdowns that he often seems to find. But he was really bad in this game. Now the Chargers, they found a little success on the ground in the red zone. But Dobbins had his touchdowns vultured from Gus Edwards, and I'm sure that ticked a few people off. Edwards had more carries than Dobbins, but then again, Dobbins got hurt in this game. Not a good situation. Herbert finished with 218 yards and no touchdowns and no interceptions. He did have a touchdown on the ground, but it was an off night for him. He's been playing pretty solid lately. They go into Atlanta this week, so he should have some more success. All right, and there's your Week 12 recap. Now, we didn't talk about all the waivers just yet. From the quarterback position, you might be able to pick up Russell Wilson. He's going to have a good matchup against Cincinnati. He's only 36% owned, so he might be out there. A wide receiver, you're really reaching if you're trying to get something out there. We talked about it. Don't go chasing Heath. Noah Brown might be a good pickup if he's available, but at this point in the season, there's not going to be a whole lot of surprises. At running back, we talked about it. McNichols is the guy to target there. I don't think Amir Abdullah is the one you want to go after. Tight end, Disley, he might be out there. Hunter Henry might be out there. They're both around 50% owned. Theo Johnson, if he's healthy, he's playable. And then we talked about defensively, the Bucks. They have the easiest schedule in the next 5 to 6 weeks. I think if you're really hurting on defense, this is a team that could take you all the way. Now remember, it's a weird week. Games Thursday, Friday, Sunday, Monday. Injuries come out 90 minutes prior to the game. There's triple games on some days. Make sure you check those updates. Check out my X feed. Work your flex positions like we always talk about. Go with your gut. And good luck this week. And before we sign off, I want to give a shout out to our men and women in uniform who protect the freedoms who we hold dear. Thank you for your service and sacrifice. And finally, thanks for listening. I know this was a long episode. If you enjoyed it, be sure to subscribe and follow us on X, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts so you can stay up to date on our latest content. And until then, remember, established dominance isn't just a catchphrase, it's a commitment. Are you ready?